Hey everyone, and welcome to Voices of Veritas, a podcast made by the church for the church. I'm Ryan Hennigan.
And I'm Michael Bashaw. At Veritas Community Church, we believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is at work in and through us, transforming all things.
On Voices of Veritas, you will hear real stories of gospel transformation, spiritual insights, and heartfelt conversations that seek to encourage us as we follow Jesus.
We invite you to join us twice a month to listen, learn, and grow in faith together. Welcome to the Voices of Veritas podcast. I am your host, Michael Bashaw, and I am joined with my co-host, Ryan Hennigan. Ryan, how's it going?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. I'm noticing the tan on your face.
You know what? I just got back from vacation. We went to Oak Island, North Carolina, and first time I was over there, highly recommend it. Not very touristy, kind of like a hidden gem, but just on the cusp of getting some of the touristy stuff. So still a lot of convenience, which is nice.
Very nice. Well, we're glad you're back here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Today's topic is the rhythm of worship. And to discuss this topic, we have some guests with us. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
I'm Lauren Raper.
Awesome. Lauren, how long have you been at Veritas?
So I have been at Veritas since 2013, and then started working here, I think, in 2015.
Okay. Awesome. And working here as what? What's your role?
Yeah, so when I was first hired in, I was Joe's assistant when he was the worship pastor, and then I moved to his assistant when he was the lead pastor, and now I'm the worship director.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Thomas?
Thomas Tye. I'm over at our west location in the Hilltop area. Yeah, I've been here just over 2 years. I started attending when I got the job. But yeah, I started it was May of 2023.
Awesome. Sweet.
My name is Andres, and I am at Tri-City. I moved to Columbus in 2017 and started attending what we were told is Veritas. We didn't know there was multiple ones, but there was we went to the one at a school, which was known as Tri-Village at the time, and started there in 2017. So yeah, we've been there since that.
What part do you play in the worship team? Like, what instrument do you play, or do vocals?
So I sing. I also play the piano. I can play the bass. I do sometimes.
Ukulele bass.
Yeah.
Heck yes.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. So Austin actually just got me one today. And I'm excited.
Bust it out.
I know. I'm excited. I think I have to play bass next week. Anyway, it's really cool. It's like a miniature bass. It looks like a ukulele.
Thomas, how about you?
Yeah, so my primary is bass guitar, but I play electric, acoustic guitar as well, and then drums, and then I sing.
Andres, how about you?
Oh yeah, so my primary instrument is guitar. Sometimes I'll terribly play piano, terribly sing, but for the most part time, I enjoy. I play banjo and a few others. You know, depends how Mumford and Sons you want it to sound like in that area. But
Yeah, Short North just relatively recently added a banjo to the worship team. And the first day that came out, I was like, this is great.
they're
Yes.
fun.
It was great.
It was cool.
That
I
was
think
really fun.
on the way home from church, I went to Spotify and turned on the playlist was If Jesus Had a Banjo.
You have to share that one.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I played that on the way home. I was like, oh yeah, this is good.
It's amazing.
Okay, so as Michael's already said, our topic today is the rhythm of worship. It's great to have you guys with us. Really appreciate you taking the time. Looking forward to the discussion. So let's go ahead and jump into rhythm of worship. One of the questions that I think comes up all the time is that worship might sound either kind of self-explanatory to some people if they've grown up in the church culture or in a religious family. But for some people, it might seem like a foreign concept. I mean, worship just kind of has like an old-timey sounding ring to it, if that makes any sense. So maybe a good idea to try to define as best as we can. I know it's probably hard to get it nailed down specifically, but try to find what worship is. What does that look like? So maybe, Lauren, we can start with you.
Sure. That's a big question, I feel like. Because, I think what you were explaining is like worship means, I think, different things to everyone. Yeah, different churches will just express that differently. And if I had to define worship, it would be walking alongside of Jesus, like throughout your life. And like worship is how you're conducting yourself and how you're pointing yourself towards Jesus, your heart, your eyes, like fixing everything on Jesus. And worship is a response of to God in all of life. So
I really like how you said it, a response. I think that really, for me anyway, kind of crystallizes that idea that it's not you just kind of engendering this thing on your own. It's, God working on you from the outside and you just kind of responding to it. I like that a lot. Thomas, do you have anything to add about how you would define worship?
Yeah, and I'll kind of go to kind of how Veritas defines worship. There's kind of two core tenets that we talk about when going through like kind of the foundations of what we believe here. And the first one is that it is ascribing worth to something. And then the second key component is that it is continuous. It is ever flowing. It is never ending. So worship really is, it's ascribing worth to something. In this case, we're ascribing that worth onto God, onto the Holy Trinity. And it's something that is continuous. It's something that we do not just through music, which we tend to think worship is selectively, but it's also through our service. It's through preaching. It's through baptism, through communion, through all these other components. It can be through how we interact. Like this is a form of worship right here. Us kind of in fellowship, us talking through this. Just you all using your gift.
We often tend to think worship is like worship songs, like what's on my Spotify list. Worship is like this church thing. Worship is a lot like, as Brad will say it, as like a fire hydrant, and you just kick it open and water pours out of it. Where that water is going, that's being poured out to it, can be towards something godly, or it could be something towards something else. We live in Columbus, so like you're gonna find a lot of Ohio State worshipers, right? Which one of them are gonna go in a football stadium and not like scream their heads out about this field goal? Punt kick? I don't know. I do know football a little bit, but I'm just talking with you. But there is, I know, whoever's on the podcast now is like, they're turning this off. That guy doesn't know anything. We're not going to the far, far west. We're sticking to the middle churches. But these things that get people fired up, or that you get excited to wake up for, or have a weekend for, that you want. Those are the things. So at Tri-City, I see so many people getting excited about families. That's the investment into it. And so many people wanting to invest in children and kids. And although we don't have a lot of teenagers yet, I mean, there are emerging ones that are growing up. Our congregation was like almost like 50% of kids. So families are a huge part of Tri-City.
I really love Thomas and Andreas. I'm going to get that wrong several times. I apologize. But the way that you guys brought in the communal aspect of worship, how like everybody has different gifts and different abilities and preferences maybe, but also like we're always worshiping something, kind of to your point of like the fire hydrant analogy. I really like that. So if we are always worshiping something, why is it necessary? Like, why is worship itself necessary if it's just something we naturally do? Like, what role does it play in the life of a believer specifically?
Worship in general is what we love, right? What we love. And man, there's, we're all gifted in this, even in this room, with different things that we love. We just talked about a vacation. We talked about knowing about technology a little earlier, but we talked about a swimming pool and like being with our families. Like, these are all wonderful things. God has gifted us with many things to be able to enjoy and enjoy gifts. When we talk about our directed worship to the Lord, that is something just a little bit different. It's because we have to be reminded of that directed worship. That's often why we have to gather. We have to be in the Word. I'm not trying to jump too far on it, but that's often why I try to encourage people to be at the very beginning of the gathering, because there's these moments where we talk about that again and again, the welcoming and the greeting and the call to worship, underline, capitalized, is probably, to me, one of the most important parts of worship. I have to be reminded why I'm here. I have to be humbled that God is a glorious, holy God, and I am not. And I have to be reminded and be invited as well, while I'm inviting others, to this part of worshiping Him.
Yeah, I think you're right on, Andreas. I think it's necessary because we, in our broken nature, need to be reminded of the gospel, need to be reminded of, okay, fixing my eyes on Jesus. Because our hearts can so easily stray and so easily get caught up in the little details of the thing, like you were saying. I think that's why it's necessary. Yeah.
And we get this mindset, we develop this like abstract desire to worship, and through the reading of God's word, as Andreas had said, and through community, as we've been talking about. We do follow just this gospel narrative structure with our worship, where we go through these liturgies, where we start with worship and adoration. We're there worshiping the creation. We're there to worship God. When we funnel that in through then confession and assurance, we acknowledge that there is sin, that we are fallen beings. That takes us into the sermon itself, where we dive into kind of like the application on how we worship, and so much more than just that. Then we get into commitment, where we have this desire not just to look at, the sin is there, that we do wrong and that we are sinful beings, but that we have this commitment to live and develop lives that are fully devoted to God. And then end with a benediction, kind of like a sending out, a calling then to take that out into the world. So into our lives, into our work, into our relationships with believers and with non-believers too.
Thomas, I love your use of the word liturgy. I think you just described Veritas' structure of liturgy, which is great. Can you, for people maybe unfamiliar with the term, what is liturgy? Why does Veritas use that type of structure for worship?
We tend to associate liturgy as like a written form. It's something that we are reading off, and there's also a component of response to that. So we tend to structure our liturgy as we'll read something off, the congregation will respond along with us. Liturgy can be much more than that. Our liturgical flow also then includes the music. It includes the sermon. It includes the other sacraments involved, such as baptism and communion. And so we are following, like I had mentioned, kind of that arc of creation, fall, redemption, restoration. I think that's the correct flow. Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. I don't know if you all have anything else to add beyond that, but
For you, Thomas, as a someone that at your congregation is someone that maybe it swings by every now and then. I enjoy going over to West to rest a little bit every now and then on a Sunday. But one thing I will say that I notice very much the way that you guys worship is you guys worship the Lord to those that have special needs. It's very apparent. And for those who are struggling with addiction, it just warms my heart. If I walked it, someone's like, what is this place about? Because we can all be like a church. They all worship. They all think. You go to West, man, and it's like they care for those two specific things. You can tell they care for the addiction, those who are struggling with addiction. You can tell how much that is the structure of your gatherings and music and the style that you've picked on how your teachings go to special needs. So I think it's amazing.
yeah, I appreciate that. And kind of to not get too much into this point, but to kind of carry on with what Andres was saying, we do work with a ministry at West called The Refuge, and they help men who are struggling with addiction and recovery. And so that just kind of give a little bit of what I call rabbit hole thought. So it has nothing to do with any of this, but just kind of rabbit hole thought for the people listening who
Good plug.
have no context. Yes, thank you.
I like it. We've kind of danced around some of these other questions that I want to bring up, but I love that we're kind of getting into this. We've talked about how worship isn't just the singing, isn't just the music. But we've also talked about it being done in a group setting. So first off, I want to ask, just for clarification, is there a right way and a wrong way to worship? Number one. And number two, can you worship alone, or does it always have to be in the context of with other believers?
I think the only wrong way to worship is if you're not worshiping Jesus. I think God has made each person so different and wired differently. And you're going to see that come out same as their personality in their worship. So there, like Andres was saying, there might be some people that are standing there quietly, and that might be consistent with their personality. There are some people that are going to be raising their hands and jumping up and down, or like whooping, or I've seen it all. But I think that that's such a beautiful aspect of worship that maybe there's some people are timid or shy to talk about, but I think the Lord has made us all differently, and we respond in worship to Him differently, and that's beautiful, because that's who He's created us to be. And I think that, to your next question about the individual versus gathered, both are really important. If there is a beauty of bringing our individual worship into a gathered worship. I just remember, this was a long time ago, but you probably know the song Bless the Lord, Son of Man. It's one of Veritas's staple day one songs. And I just remember there was one Sunday I was leading with Joe, and I think that the song is good. It's not my favorite song. I think the lyrics are great. And in that moment, I just remember oh yeah, we're singing this song. And I was okay, just think about the words. Cause I wasn't to be honest, super jazzed to sing that song. And I just look out and I see 4 people within the front section, and they just hands raised, just singing this song out so loudly. And I'm I was so encouraged to respond even more in worship to the Lord in that moment, because I was encouraged by the brothers and sisters in the seats that were just so moved by the lyrics and moved by this song. And I'm praise the Lord. This is what it's about. So I think that's so, it's so important to have both.
Yeah, that's iron sharpening iron,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Quick sidebar. I don't know if you're familiar with the comedian Tim Hawkins or not. He's a Christian comedian. Pretty funny. Honestly, I think so. But he has this bit about different worship stances with your hands.
Lord.
And yeah, right. So it was holding the TV with both your hands to the side, or the other one was carrying a box, or your hands are open, faced up. And he has got names for all of them. But after I saw that bit, I am very self-conscious about the types of motions that I am using. Because I can I can hear the name of it. It's oh, I'm doing the hold the TV right now. But I love your point about both of your points, Andreas and Lauren, about people just being able to express their love and admiration for the Lord in their own way. I mean, right? We see in Scripture, God talk all the time about every tribe, every nation is going to worship Him, and His mission is global. It's not just for a specific people group or culture. You are all on the worship teams at your various locations, or you either lead worship or play an instrument on the worship team. What is your favorite part about being part of that worship team?
I can start because
Yeah, Thomas.
So this isn't quite a memory, but just something that I really enjoy about worship at West is how this kind of fits into the context of worship is not a cookie cutter, one size fits all thing. Is that I was blessed to come into the ministry with several people who are phenomenal leaders as well as musicians. And so I can put my trust in them to carry through with a worship service that I literally have no worries. I could be out of town, have nothing to do with it, and I have no concerns. And that's not, I guess that in and of itself is kind of a point, but that wasn't the point I was going with. with how it relates to worship not being kind of like cookie cutter, one size fits all, that allows so much variety on a Sunday by Sunday basis, where my background's in heavy metal, hardcore, hard rock. When I am leading and I compose the music, I have that kind of in mind. When another one of my leaders is leading, maybe it's just them on keys or another person on acoustic. That is such a very different sound than when we have our full band and I'm, or especially for like a special service or a special gathering, where we can have the same exact songs, maybe even the exact same liturgy, exact same whatever, and we can create a moment of worship that is so different that might hit a person out in the congregation differently than it would have the week before. And I know that that's kind of like one of those things that you hear when researching how to re-energize your worship ministry, and they say make one small change, like change a graphic on your slide or move the guitarist from one side of the stage to the other. Like, I mean, those little things do quote unquote kind of impact worship, but it really is like those kind of more significant kind of changes and movements that really kind of bring in that shift and can really open up the heart of a specific person in the congregation.
Yeah, Lauren, I remember you mentioning this as well, that the different styles that Veritas incorporates from song to song, gathering to gathering, and how that reaches different people.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen that at Short North?
I feel like we do a lot of different styles of music. So where it's like, we'll do some gospel songs, like we'll do, King's Kaleidoscope, or just hymns, or Bethel or Upper Room or things like that. And I think there's something communal about bringing people from different backgrounds, of different experience of music, skill, that kind of thing, and having them lead a song, that it's the way that we do it. I think it feels more familial to the people, like all of us in the congregation, where it's not this, like, we're trying to sound like this church, or we're trying to sound like this band. It's like, it's impactful because it's us. It's Veritas. It's not anyone else. And I just think that's really beautiful.
Michael, you also are on the worship team here at the Short North. That's correct, right?
Yes.
And how long have you been doing that?
About 5 years.
Okay. And what instrument do you play?
Piano.
Piano?
Yes.
And he
Yes.
sings.
Oh, that's right.
I've started to sing. Yes. Recently.
Golden
It's a
Times
recent
Michael is what they call it. Do you have a favorite aspect of being on the worship team, or a specific memory that stands out?
Mine's kind of a technical thing. I love adding just enough to the music and not too much.
Mm.
Allowing everyone who's there to add their gift with music or something that really helps their instrument or their vocal stand out, but not overload it. So then it's just distracting, because I feel like that creates space for the music to breathe and the people to breathe and for worship to happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Andreas, how about you? Your specific memory or favorite part about being on the worship team or leading worship?
Being on the band, yeah. Man, there's so many in different parts of life, but some of the more recent ones that are just kind of come to mind. I just really enjoy the conversation that may happen during the rehearsal time.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy rehearsal because it's two things. It's kind of like getting to know other people and who you're working with. It also allows us to take things a little slower. So as maybe the meaning of what the song is being said, it comes in development, I'll get feedback like, Andreas, that should be really louder. That should be fuller. This says this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, all right, I'm glad you brought that up. How did I miss that? Let's try it his way. And then we'll give it a shot. And then other times, somebody throws out an idea, including myself, and it's like, that just doesn't stick. And I'm like, all right, let's do that. So you get to see a lot of creative people that have a lot of gifts, be able to work together to glorify God. So, it's an opportunity to magnify the Lord and magnify what maybe a lyric or a part of the song or a space for a song like you're mentioning, so that the Lord could be glorified. And I enjoy those moments a lot.
It's similar to Andreas, where it's like just talking about just that rehearsal time, but also just going back to my like original response of like each person, uses their gifts and we make this music together and it sounds like us. This was probably like a couple months ago, and it was one of the most impactful moments I think I've ever to this day had with the worship team. And we were singing a new song, and it was really like on my heart. Like this song, I just like, couldn't stop listening to it, and I was really moved by it. And the coolest part of that is we got to rehearsal, and people were like, "We really like the new song." And that's like a typical response. But when we practiced it, it was something I have never experienced before on a worship team, like ever. It was just like pure in the moment worship. And I just love that so much because it was so encouraging to me. It just solidifies, again, like I said, who we are at Veritas. And like what you see is really who people are, and like what like people are playing and how they're singing. It's just like so authentic, and I will never forget that moment. It was so beautiful and so worshipful and so real, and yeah, I just love that. Yeah.
With any form of worship, the more you get into it, the more you're showing your heart behind it. And so, like, I mean, even the inverse, you as a congregational member, if we see you out there clapping or dancing or singing loudly, smile on your face or crying, even like if that's within the context of what's going on, like that's just as much as, me on acoustic jumping around if feel led by the Spirit, or, hands in the air, whatever. So just as much as that.
Another question I personally wanted to ask, because I've thought about this for myself. I've had people ask me this question, and it's probably a little harder to ascertain, but how can I tell the difference, like specifically when it comes to music? How can I tell the difference of when I'm worshiping versus just listening to music? I mean, we've talked a little bit about Andreas specifically. You've hammered this down, which I really love. It's like worship is not just obviously gathering and singing, but it's also how you live your life. But like, I have a 20-minute drive to work. I turn on like the river radio or something, and it's in the background, and that's awesome. That's a very different experience just for me personally than like obviously coming to church on Sunday and kind of seeing the liturgy lived out. But like, what would you guys say? Like, is there a difference, or how could you tell the difference between worshiping and just listening to music?
I probably would just maybe rephrase it, and you can tell me if I got it wrong, but it's like I would rephrase it as the difference of worshiping via consumption or via worship via participation. And so like consumption is nothing particularly wrong. It could be this podcast, and you listen to like 20 podcasts a day, right? And like I'm close to the Lord. That's true. You are consuming something like that. The difference, though, in worship, it's that outpouring. So then what is the response? Well, I listen to 20 podcasts, but I'm going to use these things for knowledge so I can share the good news with somebody else. I want to participate in something like that, a part of my community or my family. I want to teach my children. I want to teach my friends. I want to talk about this at work. That type of worship is response. Sometimes that response is holy. And sometimes that response could probably use some help. so, and that's why we do this as a community, and we do this in the Lord. And there is freedom. And if we swing back a little bit to the liturgy, that forms of worship, it's form, which mean like not form like what I write out, but like form is like how that looks like in person. Like, and so like what Thomas and Lauren were talking about is like sometimes that looks like hearing the gospel prayed over you. Sometimes that is reading true writings and participating in it. So somebody may write this prayer out that's seen on a screen, and you're reading it back. There might be some things that make you uncomfortable on there. Are they true? Are they false? Do they make you think? Do you just stay silent in that moment? Because I'm struggling to provide this assurance of pardon and seeing these things, that can be tough. I want to see justice. I'm talking about assurance of pardon here. I want to hear confession. I don't want to confess this thing. These are unique things that are part of a Sunday gathering, but they are unique because they allow us to have opportunities to wrestle with participating in that small way.
I like where you're going with that. I'd love to dial a little closer in on what you're saying, which in my mind, good art always requires participation on some level. So what is it that sets worship music or Christian art apart from something else you might listen to in the day? What does that participation look like? And how is that different, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask. I think you touched on it there, but I'd love to hear a little more of how you see that playing out.
I think what came to mind is just that you're being filled with something, right? In both spaces. And I think even if it's not conscious action of like response, it is filling you these truths about Jesus. And I know plenty of times where I am, working on something and I have, worship music on in the background, and later on I'll like just keep singing a line over and over. But it's like there is something where it's like the Lord is using those things to move in our hearts in specific ways. But I think kind of, Michael, to your point of like what's the difference between like just regular music you would listen to versus like worship. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's that similar like response of filling. Like that, I don't know, any other type of music you listen to isn't necessarily bad, but it's filling you, right? So subconsciously you're taking in all of this stuff. Whereas with worship, the intent is to fill ourselves with things that are holy and pointing to Jesus, so that we can respond in worship to the Lord. So, yeah.
I am not qualified to answer this question, Michael, but something that came to my mind when you asked this is I was listening to a podcast about different types of worship music or different types of music in general, I should say. And full disclosure, the guy hosting the podcast was Catholic, and he was coming at it from that kind of lens. So he was kind of comparing the differences between like a traditional hymn versus like rock music, like 80s music, right? And I forget who he quoted, but I want to say it was Thomas Aquinas or someone like that, who said that, like when you sing a hymn in a liturgy, like it's all encompassing. It kind of feeds into your higher levels of affection for the Lord. Mm-hmm. But when you listen to other music, which again, the host of the podcast compared to like 80s music, like even just the tone, like there's a lot of bass, there's a lot that's really just fast and loud, and that kind of, he used the term like your bass passions, like those kind of play towards your bass passions. It's not like that music is wrong or sinful or whatever, but it can engender a different type of feeling. So like when you work out, for example, like you're probably not listening to opera. You're probably listening to like some type of 80s hardcore or workout playlist that you have that's like, all right, you know what, I'm going to run this extra mile or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you're worshiping the Lord, not that you can't have like Christian rock or whatever, but rather than just kind of having that kind of bass, like I'm just a creature ready to like, I don't know, run 1,000 miles. Like you're in this moment where you're like plumbing the depths of your mind more so than like your body.
Art in worship can be two things. It can be so good and so amazing that it draws everybody in, and it's enjoyable, and something that you can see, and you know that something the gifts have been used. In worship, the main point is to point to Christ. We are not pointing to ourselves. So sometimes what I enjoy is in liturgy is contextualizing. I use that moment and those things to contextualize a song that may have a lot of beautiful art that these musicians have made something great. I know they can just sit in and just enjoy this. This keyboardist is phenomenal. The person that's playing violin is going to have something that just every time I listen to it, it's getting me because there's enough art into it. That's great. Those things are, God has gifted us with those. But we're using it to point people to Christ.
I think we kind of touched on this a little bit with just some of the answers, but I just wanted to specifically ask, what are some barriers to worship that you guys see either in yourselves or just in the congregational setting as you're leading? Yeah. Thomas, maybe we can start with you.
One of the big ones is our heart. Like, what's our heart posture? You could be listening to a worship song. You could be in a worship service and you could not be worshiping. You can still be singing along, faking it till you make it. But if your heart is not in a posture of worship and ascribing worth to God, then what you are doing is not worship. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily negative. But is that thing that you were doing actually worship? The cliche kind of thing that they talk about in worship podcasts and stuff, where it's like, you don't know what someone's coming into. You don't know what fight they had with their spouse on the way in, or how rowdy the kids were, or any number of situations. Coffee got spilled, XYZ that puts somebody in a disadvantage or a disadvantaged point of being able to put themselves into an actual state of worship or mindset or heart of worship.
I think that the main barrier that I see across like many different places, even individually, is communing with the Lord is vulnerable. No matter what in our life, there are parts of us that we try to hide or protect or think, like we got this, And I feel like I see it both ways. I see it in response, like to the Lord physically, and or just, whether that's like singing or just in like a church context. I feel like there's a physical boundary as well as a emotional one. Andreas mentioned earlier, like there's sometimes that you just really don't feel like praying that prayer of confession or singing that song. You're like, man, that hits real hard today. But I think that like it's necessary for our walk with the Lord. And the beauty of it is that He already knows everything. I think that vulnerability is the biggest barrier.
Yeah, I think as you were alluding to, like there are multiple levels of vulnerability, especially like when you're worshiping in a gathered setting. Like it's like the peer pressure of like, do I take my hands out of my pocket?
Totally.
Or like the personal, like I don't want to read this confession. So like there can be multiple barriers. And Thomas, as you said, like fighting with your spouse on the way to church. Like I'm sure we've all
none of us have done that, right? No.
It's very real. I love how we've kind of incorporated this into all the answers you guys have given in this discussion is just authenticity, right? Like worship is a key part of that is authenticity with ourselves, with the Lord, and how we respond. And I'm hearing that as like a consistent theme amongst all of us. So I really, really think that that's something I'm going to take away from this discussion. Another question that I'd like to kick around is, we've talked about liturgy, just kind of what it is and how Veritas uses it and why it's important. So getting in a little more like in the weeds on that little detail, when the worship team is structuring a liturgy for a Sunday morning service, what type of like scrutiny is involved in like the song choice, the lyric choice, maybe even instruments? How are the songs being vetted for like, I guess, theological accuracy or just how they fit in the liturgy overall? Anyone can speak to that. Maybe Andreas, we'll start with you.
Yeah, for song selection, there's a group of people that I will bounce ideas off of, and they also are bouncing ideas off me too. So it's like we get to collaborate on ideas, and often we try to put these songs that we're talking about in areas that may have need. So like most recently, a need that I'd been hearing in a few sermons was lament. I don't really spend a ton of time there. It's a hard one to really think, because it's like for those listening and for those kind of that already go to Veritas, Veritas really does kind of hang out with a pretty simplified liturgy, in my opinion. of a call to worship, which is this holy God, a confession and assurance, which seems to be pretty cut and dry if you hear that. There is teaching of the word, which we passing the peace. Some of these are out of order. And then there's a commitment. And then there's the benediction at the end of the gathering. So benediction being like a blessing to people, a commitment being this commitment that we share together that we're going to do as a church or as after hearing the word. When it comes to lament, where do I put that? It could go in a confession assurance. Sure, that seems to be the most area. But what if I'm being called to worship God because I'm in a season, or the church is in a season of sadness, or they see something wrong, or there's a brokenness because something a family has gone through and affects the whole church. And we have gone through that. And, working through that with like co-leaders is really, really healthy and helpful. And so that when we get to present these songs, we mention that they're new. And as we're teaching the church, we get that. Some of the feedback I've received often when I share that it is a new song, we share it as a congregation, it's a new song, and we're learning it specifically to hey, this song meant, I'm sorry it's not a banger at the beginning. sorry, trying to present it like this is the reason why this exists, and we're going to walk through this together.
Thomas, Lauren, anything to add? How do you vet songs for structuring the liturgy?
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of take a step back too, and just vetting a song to include in general. It can't combat scripture. Like that's first and foremost. Like it, and I know I've experienced it where I've put a song in and without fully analyzing what each line is, and then we've had people even just Ash Wednesday. We had included a song, and one of the Tri-City members pointed out some issues theologically with a couple of the lines that you could kind of go back and forth on, like, oh no, but they mean this by this. They mean this by this. And so that kind of then feeds into the second point is, in those kind of instances, having those people that can run through it after that, whether it be like Andreas and I talked after that, or sending it to our lead pastor and saying like, hey, what is your thought on this? But so yeah, first and foremost, it needs to be theologically sound. And then beyond that, there's so many other like little factors that kind of matter on a case-by-case basis, especially based on how we at West lead versus Tri-City versus Shore North. But then kind of to feed into the point, fitting them into the flow of liturgy, is just kind of praying on that to see like, how can we apply this song? Does that fit more as a call to worship, or does it fit more in like within a commitment? Because there are some songs that you could kind of shoehorn in wherever you need to. But like, where is it most effective for getting the gospel across and getting the point of the sermon across, and fitting the direct needs of the congregation?
How have you guys experienced growth in worship? What's like a personal area of growth that you've seen in yourself, and also one that extends to either the band or the church in general?
Our efforts on being an inclusive kind of space, an inclusive congregation in terms of people who struggle with disability. That's something that when I started was kind of talked about, but since then, in the 2 years I've been here, like we have made that we've put that at the forefront of why we do what we do, through decisions with getting rid of our acoustic drum kit and going in either the direction of using cajon, or we just bought an electric kit, with having different kind of sensory friendly kind of like headphones for people who might struggle with that, having spaces for people to step out. I think that has been the biggest thing. Maybe it's because it's the most recent thing we're discussing over at West, but that seems to be the biggest area of growth that I've experienced, because it's not just within our worship ministry, it's also in how our Connect team interacts with people. It's how we inform decisions on our budget for having different spaces. What do we need to improve to allow people to be able to come in and worship who might not be able to otherwise?
Lauren, how about you?
That's a big question, Michael. Personally, the growth that I've seen comes back to the vulnerability piece. I was really struggling. And I told Joe one day, I was like, look, I feel like I don't belong on the stage. I don't feel like I should be there. I don't feel like I should be, leading people in worship on Sunday. And he was like, no, that's exactly why you're there. Like, show us what the Lord is teaching you. Bring us in. And I think from that point on, I've just been like, I don't know. I think I knew that, but I think that conversation with him just really changed my heart in so many ways and how I approach, picking the songs and writing the liturgy and being able to communicate from the stage and just even in how I sing, kind of emphasizing things that really speak to my heart, whether I'm singing louder or softer or whatever that may be. I think that has really, for me personally, has grown. And I pray that has, I don't know, that people can also feel the same, to respond in the same way. And I know like that is a personal goal of ours here at the Short North this year, is just how are we creating a space for people to feel they can be comfortable in where they are to respond in worship to the Lord.
Yeah, speaking just from like a participant side, like not on the band, obviously. One of the ways that I've seen growth in the rhythm of worship, specifically at the Short North, is some of the songs we transitioned to Spanish, which I thought was interesting at the beginning. And then eventually it was described like, this is a way to incorporate our brothers and sisters in Christ who are from a different culture, who may be visiting the church or a part of the church, and English might not be their primary language. This is just a way to be welcoming and to really live out that, like, every tribe, every nation, every tongue type of theology. I just love the intentionality behind it. And as someone in the crowd participating in worship, it just made me feel like I'm really glad that the people who are putting this liturgy together or picking these songs are really having this heart and this type of mindset of when we do choose a song as a church to sing, like, it's been thought about. And when we do a call and response, like, it's been thought about.
I have so much respect for all of you who put together the sets and the liturgy during the week, knowing the thought that goes into it and the prayer that goes into it. There's a lot of thoughtfulness at Veritas.
How do you guys see the rhythm of worship kind of coinciding or working alongside the other spiritual disciplines or other rhythms here at Veritas in particular?
I see. I'll give you an example, and one thing that that I enjoy because it affected me is when you see it for missions. Maybe I'm just because I had a few band members that have been sent off. I remember like just so many times that their mission would have an effect on what we would sing or be doing liturgies about. It would affect kind of like what we wanted to make sure was being portrayed and said.
If we're describing worship as ascribing worth through continuous outpouring, then technically we could be worshiping through any of the other rhythms. I think that's probably an oversimplified answer, but I mean, just to kind of cut right into it, like, we can worship through any of the rhythms, whether it even be missions or service, whatever it might be. There is a component of worship that is involved with that, and then can also be outwardly expressed through them as well.
I even think, like, when you said that, Thomas, like, I totally agree. I think that worship is the core, like, of all of the rhythms. And I just thought of the song, Heart of Worship, and just the words of that, like, coming back to the heart of worship where it's all about you, Jesus. And, like, that is at the center of all those things. It's at the center of all those rhythms. And so,
do you guys have like a favorite song to incorporate? I know that might be like, I don't know, tough call, but it's like, man, I always love to play this song or sing this song. Do you have one on the top of your head?
I will speak in the most analytical way possible. After running a report and planning center, I found that we at West have done "Who You Say I Am" by Hillsong more than any other song. Like, no question. Like, it's 50 times probably, like 50 instances more than the next song down, I think. Maybe 30, maybe 50 might be dramatic, but I do like the song.
Yeah.
It's a very, very good song.
For sure.
I'm just going to answer the question based upon recent because I feel like it's really hard to pick. I think recently my favorite has been "Consider Him" by Upper Room. It's so good. But I also we do this tag a lot of "None But Jesus," and I just love singing those words.
Well, once again, Michael and I just want to thank you guys for coming here today and sharing your wisdom and your experience and just being willing to talk about the rhythm of worship and seeing how it really is kind of a bigger concept than we probably think it is, and how vulnerability and authenticity are very key, and just living your life, not just singing a song, So we really appreciate you guys just sharing that with us. We look forward to continuing the rhythm of worship and practice with everybody. And that'll do it for us today on the Voices of Veritas podcast. Thanks for tuning in.